Hi, everyone. Welcome into the Rochester Press Box. It's summertime, boys. What do you think?
Can't wait. 4th of July weekend. Love it already.
We were in the Golden Slug today, right?
The Slug jersey, well, it's Sabres draft time, 7th-round pick, former 7th-round pick of the Buffalo Sabres, Nathan Pache rocking the Slug today.
Yeah. Where does this rank as far as, because the Sabres got so many.
Everybody hates the Slug for some reason. I love the Slug. I've always been a big Slug guy. And we forget when they went from the Goat Head to the Slug, it was for a very long time the highest selling jersey. You could not find these in Western New York for like a year.
Is that a lucky draft jersey?
No, he wasn't. He was drafted second. Let me try this again. The Capitals drafted him. He didn't sign. He then was drafted by the Sabres 3 years later, 5 rounds after.
I feel like I'm spending a lot of time on the Slug.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
But it is fascinating to me.
It draws
Do
you.
some research on this. Did they know? When they put that out, wasn't there somebody in the room that said, that kind of looks like a slug?
I always thought more toupee than slug, but I mean, who knows, man? It works. I enjoy it. So.
A slug with horns. Okay.
All right. Hey, Tariq, I love it when the Cincinnati Reds are good.
Yes.
And geez, they're good. And when you look up and down the standings of the Major League Baseball as we head into the July 4th holiday weekend, there's all these teams that weren't supposed to be there. Preseason, 15 to 20% chance of making the playoffs, if that, are competing. And some guys...
We'll get to my Mets. Trust me, we'll have plenty of time on that. But you know what's interesting about this? Baltimore is still hanging around.
Yeah.
The Angels, who have always been terrible, have found a way to hang around. The Cincinnati Reds. It's bizarre sort of how baseball started to work here, whereas the Yankees not having their footing yet, the Mets totally off of their game right now. Dodgers still holding it together a bit, what they got. San Diego still surprised about them. Toronto's supposed to be great, and they're not really into it. And Boston might be creeping up there later on. Listen, they're not that far away from the wild card. I'm not saying division, wild card, because Tampa's got that a lot.
They have to finish in the top 3 of that division, which is be the real problem, that Boston's looking at. I mean, because you can't make it work if you don't find 2 teams in that division to beat.
Yeah, I don't know. I just find a way to believe that Baltimore let them enjoy their run. Same thing with the Cincinnati Reds. Same thing with the Angels.
Are you saying they won't last?
No, I think Houston will find a way to get it back up there. Maybe Boston will run a thrill later
Baltimore?
at the end. We know how baseball works for Baltimore and Anaheim. They don't really last in those spots. They tend to fall.
But here's what you're doing. You're thinking old baseball playoff rules, right?
True.
And I think you could attribute not only what's happening now, but the fact that all of these teams are going to do what they can to stay in this race to the expanded playoffs, right? Because there are teams, walking into the season, what's the point of even trying? Pittsburgh forever and ever and ever, because there's no way we're going to compete. Now that you have an opportunity to work your way into, a short series up front and see what happens, more teams are willing to spend that money.
With a long history of doing things poorly, like the major, when they tweaked that playoff system, and they really didn't do that much. They added 1 team and they made it a best of 3 instead of 1, but they engaged a lot more teams to stay involved.
Well, I mean, but the same thing has happened in the NFL too, where all of a sudden, those teams that were so far out of it, well, now there's a glimmer of hope. And if there's a glimmer of hope, people are going to buy tickets to come out to the ballpark. In a gate-driven league like Major League Baseball is, that is very important. The owners are making money on this.
And baseball, full well, that hot team going into the playoffs somehow goes on a magical run. It happens in NHL hockey too, where there's a team that was dominant all year long, and then the hot team, hot goaltender, next thing you know, they go on a run, they get in a series, and they win the Stanley Cup.
Vegas still doesn't buy it, though, because I'm looking at the odds on these things, and I think it's something like 40 to 1 against the Reds to win the World Series. Mm-hmm. It's 8 to 1 on the Yankees.
Yeah, but I mean, that makes sense too. Although you're right, the AL East is a juggernaut right now. Cincinnati's young. Cincinnati is very rarely there. And I think that the expectations of franchises make a difference too. If the Yankees don't make it to the World Series this year, it's house cleaning time in New York. Yeah. Whereas if Cincinnati makes it to the playoffs, they're going to have a freaking parade for them.
And oh, by the way, baseball's going to have to start marketing some of these stars. I don't know too many of the big name players on these major league rosters that are playing extremely well. They got it. Shohei is one guy, but they've got to show other talents and players in this All-Star game and try to get them other than Ronald Acuna and all these other different names that people barely know.
But even with the superstars, right? Shohei Ohtani, Tuesday has one of the greatest games in the history of baseball. I only got to see it on highlights, and half the people I talked about it with that day didn't know what I was talking about.
And oh, by the way, the All-Star game in Seattle. My goodness.
Ellie Dela Cruz.
Yeah.
A name to know. Cincinnati shortstop. This is the Rochester Press Box talking Buffalo Bills next. Just Passing Through, J-Mac, Soccer Sam Fantuzzo, Loretta Scott, Joe Beard, 29 in all, life lessons from notable Rochesterians. Available now.
I have some travel books, Volume 1, Volume 2. You'll be able to get one of these books for free when you buy the new Volume 2 for only $14.95. Contact me at MikeTheGetawayGuy@gmail.com.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box. Talking Buffalo Bills. You know, it's sort of like, and we touch upon this, it seems, every week we talk in the offseason about the Bills because, frankly, there's not that much to talk about. But is Sean McDermott, is this a crossroads year for, despite the fact that he got a new contract just this week? Is this a crossroads for him?
When I saw you suggest the idea that Sean McDermott might be on the hot seat for his job if things don't go well, I wanted to take my phone and throw it through the wall in my house. And I'm not a violent person, Bill, but you made me want to put a hole in my drywall. Anybody that suggests that there is any pressure that would cost him his job on Sean McDermott this year if things don't go poorly, are you kidding? Do you not remember the years we wandered the desert eating nothing but manna, 17 of them, up until Sean McDermott shows up, and he's missed the playoffs one time the entire time he's been here. You cannot hold last season against him. Again, I will say it, the amount of things the Bills had to deal with that were out of anybody's control, and he still held them together and won a playoff game with them.
But you've been critical of him. Is this a different Pat Duffy? Did we lose the Pat Duffy from 2 weeks ago and got a different Pat Duffy?
Or is it simply it's true. I mean, you were the hardest on him of all of us for a long time.
I am critical of his in-game big decision making when it comes to when we're going to challenge timeouts, things like that. Look, I think McDermott is a great coach, and I guess the question becomes this, right? If you're going to replace a coach, you need to replace him with somebody. Who would you rather have with the offense and defense that you have than Sean McDermott and his staff?
Well, I will say this. The fact that they re-signed him shows them that they not only have faith in him, I think there is going to be something that happens this season that's going to be like, okay, if you want to get rid of me, you're going to have to pay dearly. I think he signed in 2027, which, let's put it to you this way. I will take Duffy at his word for last season with all the turmoil that went in, everything that's going on, players' lives on the lines, all these different things like that. But you're going to have to show me something this year. I mean, to be honest with you, you're going to have to get back to where you were 2 years ago with all of the quote-unquote distractions with Stephon Diggs. You're going to have to lead them through that crap, through the training camp, through the NFL season, with a better AFC East than last year.
Okay, let me put it this way. For years and years and years, working the job that I have, I knew 2 days ahead of time what the Bills were going to do before it hit the news. I knew before some of the guys that worked in the franchise before it hit the news, just because everything was wide open. The moment that Sean McDermott took that job, nobody has been able to tell me anything about anything. That place is locked down tight. He cares about his people. And I laughed at the idea of culture. I did. I thought it was a stupid thing. I thought you needed talented players. I was wrong. What that franchise has become, what those players have become, it's true.
I think culture is a result of the winning, though. I think the winning comes first.
Oh, I disagree, because you had a back into a playoff lucky. I mean, it broke the drought. It was great, but they should not have made the playoffs the year with Tyrod Taylor. Right. They had a horrible season after that. Yet you still saw these guys that cared about each other. They put their arms around each other. There was a common goal to fight for. And if there's one thing that McDermott does really, really well, he creates a common goal, a common enemy, and his guys strive towards that. And I don't think people appreciate how hard it is to do with grown men their entire lives that have played football that are making $1 million a year.
I'm not advocating for it, to roll that out there as a topic. I'm not advocating that he should be in trouble. But there has been, you have to kind of put those 17 years, okay, that's off the front burner. There's been a slight regression in the last few years.
Yes.
It peaked last season.
Thank you.
And if it continues, and I got to admit a bias here, I listen to a lot of Colin Cowherd, who backs up arguments. Very interestingly, he's a real proponent on offensive head coaches and the progress that they've made, and there's been a tapering off of the Bills because of the defensive side.
I'm not just agreeing with Bill because I made the same point earlier, but I'm agreeing with him in the sense that the appetite for the Buffalo Bills is a little bit more hungry now with.
Yeah, he's kept the face.
Well, that's fine. But he knows the truth. You're absolutely right. You get rid of the last 15 years or so where you were teams just floundering out there. Now Sean McDermott has put in a culture, put in a team, but the appetite now is to now go to the AFC Championship game and win. The appetite now is to go to the Super Bowl and win. You haven't had that in about a decade and a half. So now people are hungry. They want to see this team beat Kansas City or Cincinnati or both, who doesn't even matter, to get the Super Bowl, which you know full well is the next step. And if they don't take it in the next 3 years, they're rebuilding again.
First off, if you look at this offensive statistics of this team, it lines up almost exactly the same for the last 4 years. So there was not an offensive tapering off. It's all a mirage. Second of all, I love how you guys say, like, you got to make it to an AFC Championship or a Super Bowl. Like, there's a guy out there who's sitting on his couch where they can be like, we could get him and go to the AFC Championship or the Super Bowl, but why would we do that? Sean's car's already parked here. Like, no, you guys are do you understand how many things have to fall into line?
Yes.
It's never the best team that wins the Super Bowl.
That's true.
Right? So
but, sometimes, yes.
When is the last time the best
Kansas City
team,
Chiefs
they
were
were
crying out
not
loud.
the best team last year. The Chiefs were not the best team in the NFL last year.
It's
The
a good
Bengals
question.
were the best team in the NFL last
And they
year.
didn't make it to the Super Bowl.
That's my point. So you can make...
Kind of is his point.
Thank you. You're now yelling my points back at me.
So the Eagles weren't better. You telling me
The Eagles should not have made it to the Super Bowl.
But they did.
But they because
I'm just saying, before
third string quarterback.
there has to be doesn't there have to be a timeline on this? You got your quarterback.
Sure.
You've got pieces in place.
Sure.
Isn't there a timeline and increasing pressure on the head coach to get something out of this?
Okay, if he's winning playoff games and your division every year, how you even broach the idea of blowing him out is insane. Talk to me when the Bills don't win the division. Talk to me when the Bills miss the playoffs. Talk to me when they come in with high expectations to lose in the first round. Then we'll have the discussion. But even if that happens this year, he should have his job.
Oh gosh!
Going into the next season.
Keep
Last
this tape.
word.
Please keep this tape because I know full well a possibility of those scenarios could happen. And he might feel differently when your team has, like Bill said, regressed.
A little bit. I mean, it's not terribly noticeable, but just a little bit. This is the Rochester Press Box, like it or not, is next.
Window.
Here's the Press Box Trivia question, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road.
Hey, hello again, Mike O'Brien, your getaway guide. Today I'm in the Finger Lakes, Skinny Atlas, and today's getaway is a boat ride getaway. Come along for the ride. Check out the getaway guy on Facebook.
Here's the Press Box Trivia answer, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box. Our Like It or Not segment is brought to you by Sport Clips, where the MVP experience is better than ever. Sport Clips, it's a game changer. No appointments are needed. Stop by a Rochester location today. The whole idea of these MVP votes that happen in the NBA and the NHL and outing the media members who don't vote the popular way.
Well, okay, let's use the NHL. Just Connor McDavid is left off. One of the writers leaves Connor McDavid almost completely off of his vote for MVP. Those folks should have to justify the takes that they have. Like having a vote for MVP in all of these leagues, there's salaries tied to it, there's endorsements tied to it, there's fan love tied to it. If you want to leave them off, I'm fine with it. But give me the reason. You should have to justify this idea. That's what we're doing here. It's just entertainment anyway.
For what, though? You're not going to get rid of the guy's vote next year or the woman's vote next year. There's no sustainability. I can say whatever I want about why I left them off.
And I'm thinking, like, if I'm one of those guys, I'm worried about how my vote's going to fly in the public. If I really think it was somebody other than McDavid and I vote that way, I'm going to get killed.
But then give me justification. Give me numbers to back it up. Don't just, because look, you know this, man. There are folks who won't vote for players because of weird personal reasons, because of, things that happen with franchises 30 years ago. It's like, what was it? Was it Steve Spurrier who used to put his first coaching job ever, #1 every year in the coaches poll, right? Was that a fair? No, it's just, doesn't matter. The point that I'm making is, I don't care what your justification is. Give me a legitimate justification, or you should have your vote polled and give it to somebody who is going to do it the right way.
Now, that's a really good point. I mean, he raises a point. Now, what's the penalty for it? I can say what I want. Nothing's going to happen to me. I'll just do it again next year. Like you said, take it personal. What if I do lose my vote? What if I'm not considered? What if I look back on the way I voted the last few years? There's plenty of many people out there that would take those votes immediately.
Like it or not, quickly, the NBA offseason.
Love it, because something happens and then nothing happens. Chris Paul to the Warriors, I don't know. I really can't figure that one out. Someone else, please explain that to me. But then Damian Lillard got rumored to go all these different places. Hasn't gone yet as we're recording this. Of course, as we're recording this, he'll get traded and I'll look like an idiot. Oh, look at us, just like that. But, I love these sort of discussions going forward because it makes you wonder who likes what. And there's nothing by the Lakers. The team that really needs to make some moves. Very quiet.
It's so funny if all the rumors came true. Wouldn't it? If like everyone that they said was going to moved, these teams would be unrecognizable. Our Like It or Not segment brought to you by Sport Clips Unfinished Business is next.
The Press Box Stat of the Week is being brought to you by McArdle's Restaurant in Fairport. Come home to McArdle's.
And now to Eichel. He floated one.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here on the Rochester Press Box, our Unfinished Business segment brought to you by the Genesee Brew House, your beer destination since 2012. Visit the gift shop, enjoy a tasting in our pilot brewery, and dine at the pub-style restaurant at the Genesee Brew House. Unfinished Business, Pat.
I had the honor and pleasure of throwing out a first pitch at a Red Wings game about 2 weeks ago. I know a lot of you folks on social media have seen it because all you did was bust my chops about how poor it was. And I walked in with a plan. I was going to throw smoke no matter what from the bump, which I think I deserve credit for. Thank you very much. And whatever happened, happened. But let me give you a little behind the scenes of a first pitch because everybody that was commenting on how poorly it went told me how much better they would do if they were throwing out the first pitch at a baseball game in front of a whole bunch of people. Well, first of all, do you know that you don't get to warm up? You're cold, buddy. Cold. Walk out there. Other fun fact. My wife's a dermatologist, so I have to wear sunscreen all the time. Also, I'm the most pale Irish man that ever existed. Super slippery hand. That's not an excuse. But that ball they give you to throw out the first pitch, it says first pitch on it. You get to keep it. It's a cool little souvenir. Right out of the bag. No scuffs, no nothing. Slippery ball. No warm-up. Everybody watching you. And there was something I realized as the pitch was happening. Because my rock back felt really good, right? Planted my foot, drove forward. Everything was great. And as the ball came over the top of my head, I realized, oh my God, I haven't thrown a pitch in like 4 years. Literally, in the moment as it was coming over my head, I thought to myself, I've made a terrible mistake. And watch that ball sail to the right, just out of the hands of the 5-foot wide mascot that couldn't get it with his 10-foot wide glove. Say all you want about how you could do better. Maybe you could, but the fact of the matter is, when you throw out a first pitch at a baseball game, they set you up to fail.
All right, by now you already know the New York Mets are trying to put it all together and bring this multi-million-dollar team and galvanize them with Buck Showalter and our general manager and our owner, Stevie Cohen, and I'm not buying it. You want to know why? Because it's the same thing that they were missing a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's called leadership. It's what we talked about earlier with the Buffalo Bills, the culture of the team. You can like all the home runs and the tearing off the shirts and the great moments in the players, but when these multi-million-dollar players do not perform, Francisco Lindor, it is going to leave a mark that the team is not being run the right way in the clubhouse. Now, you can blame the manager, you can blame the general manager, you can blame the owner, you can blame the players, but something about this team does not fit. I know culture, I know leadership, and the Mets do not have a culture, they do not have leadership, and if they don't get it right within the next 3 weeks after the All-Star game, blow it all up. Keep Pete Alonso, keep a couple of talented players like McNeil, and then try all over again. Stevie Cohen's got the money. We just need the leadership he's got to pay for. Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah. Expunging is an interesting concept. Make things go away. Create a little revisionist history. We first come across the term with Ebenezer Scrooge. Expunging is named from a tombstone in A Christmas Carol, thus at least temporarily cheating death. There's some in Washington, D.C. right now trying to expunge the last 3 impeachments. So as long as that's okay, in theory at least, let's take a few swings of our own. How about we expunge wide right? Scott Norwood makes the 47-yard field goal for the Buffalo Bills in Super Bowl 24, and the Bills win. Music City Miracle? Never happened. Expunged. The Bills beat the Titans. 13 seconds? Forget about it. While we're at it, Keith Smart of Indiana missed that jumper at the end of the NCAA Championship men's basketball game in 1987, and Syracuse won. Bill Buckner fields that ground ball, and the Red Sox beat the Mets in the 1986 World Series. But you get the idea. We have the power to fix everything, have things just the way we want without regard for consequence if granted the power to expunge. We take titles away from the Giants, Indiana, and the Mets. So what? Who cares? If Congress can do it, so can we. As long as we can get the votes by whatever means. That is our Unfinished Business, brought to you by the Genesee Brew House, and that is our program. So how about we expunge that first pitch?
Oh, wow.
Why would you?
Mark the tape. Oh, that's two of them in this one segment.
Why would you say something so mean? I tried. I went out and I tried as hard as I could, and that was the mean thing you said.
That's the funniest joke of 2023 on this show.
And it wasn't yours.
I'll try harder next time.
All right, yeah, okay. That's really not what I expected.
That's amazing, Butter.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week at the Rochester Press Box.
Real emotion. How's it feel, Bill?